Hey guys, my name is Amaris. We're just going to jump straight into the devotional for today. So I'll be reading from Luke 9:51 through 56. It's the Amplified Classic Version. And it says, "Now when the time was almost come for Jesus to be received up to heaven, he steadfastly and determinedly set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers before him, and they reached and entered a Samaritan village to make things ready for him. But the people would not welcome or receive or accept him, because his face was set as if he was going to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, observed this, they said, 'Lord, do you wish us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did?' But he turned and rebuked and severely censured them. He said, 'You do not know of what spirit you are. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them from the penalty of eternal death.' And they journeyed on to another village." So there's a couple of things that I draw from this passage. The first thing is that Jesus was missionally focused. So we see in verses 51 through 53 that Jesus was going to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was where he was going to be crucified. That was the whole purpose of his time on earth. He came to earth to be crucified and to be resurrected. But what's cool about that is that although Jesus was missionally focused, he brought people in to accomplish that mission. So we see in verses 52 to 54 that the roles that the disciples played. So the disciples were necessary in preparing the way for Jesus. And similarly to how the disciples prepared the way for Jesus, we today are his modern day disciples. And so we do the same thing with the gospel message, with communicating that to others. But what's interesting about this is that when the disciples went to communicate the gospel to the Samaritans, we saw the tension of the disciples' relationship with the Samaritans. And so we saw that the Samaritans essentially rejected the gospel message. They rejected accepting Jesus into their village. But what's cool is what Jesus's response is. Jesus' response to that was to not reciprocate that rejection, which brings me to my last point. Jesus didn't reciprocate that rejection, and the disciples brought to him the anger that they felt about how they rejected them. But Jesus' response was so loving because he came to bring them life. He came to bring them the truth of the gospel through love and through grace. And so that's the same thing that we do. As his disciples, we bring the gospel message, we prepare the way, but we also are to prepare our hearts to not reciprocate the rejection that we may receive. And so where do we go from here, right? We have all of these beautiful verses. We have Holy Week. We have what the resurrection cross means, which is such a beautiful thing. We go just as Jesus went. We go missionally. We go with the purpose of spreading the gospel. We go with others as his disciples, but bringing on other disciples. And we go preparing ourselves not to reciprocate rejection. So we go knowing that the gospel may be rejected, but the truth of the gospel, the root of the gospel, is love and it's grace. So even in rejection, we go without reciprocating that rejection. So be encouraged. Thank you guys for joining us. And I hope to see you guys out for the rest of the events this week.